banging the drum for China. But some would better tell them the boom days could be over. Opinions differ as to how China will weather the global recession, because statistical data here is often opaque. There is broad agreement, however, that growth will slump to its lowest level since China joined the WTO in 2001.
We estimate that growth will slow down from close to 12% last year to less than 10% this year and 8% next year. So 8% sounds like a lot compared to 12%, but in a global recession, I think that's still pretty impressive.
Certainly such a forecast in the US or Europe would be a call for celebration. But in China, 8% is considered too low to create enough jobs each year for another 10 million school and college leavers and some 15 million new workers from the countryside, far less former staff of shuttered export manufacturing firms.
The consensus in China seems to be that if growth drops significantly below 9%, you will see rising unemployment. And in any country, rising unemployment becomes a political problem, and I suspect it would become a political problem here in China too.
The global financial crisis clearly presents China's government with a wake-up call to pursue a growth model that's less reliant on sales abroad and foreign investment in export production lines. So Beijing is now exploring ways to stimulate domestic consumption. Consumer confidence, however, is low.
I feel a lot of pressure. All the supermarket prices of our daily necessities are going up. Food, cooking oil, everything. It's having a big effect on our standard of living. Like we have to reconsider whether or not to take a short break.
The middle class is also feeling poorer because the Shanghai stock market is down 2/3 from its peak in September 2007. It's telling that for the past 2 months, car sales have fallen, and then consider the mother of all indicators, the property sector. Local developers tell me that a year ago, they didn't have to go to the banks for money, the banks came to them. But the government was getting worried. Too much property was too expensive for normal working families. Speculation by others was rife. The government began tightening credit and raising interest rates. Now we're seeing the back of a 7-year frenzy of rising prices and ferocious demand. Throughout the country, bubbles are bursting. Demand is weak, prices are falling fast. But if there's an outright collapse in real estate construction, potentially millions of unemployed migrant labourers could be left hanging around the cities. And as for economic growth, this could reduce by a further 1 percentage point. At least China's government has cash in hand. Beijing holds over $1.7 trillion in foreign reserves, while its prudent fiscal policy of late has generated strong surpluses, $173 billion in the first half of 2008. So the argument goes, it can spend its way out of a problem.
But there's a lot of controversy as to how quickly the government can do that, and whether it can do it quickly enough to replace foreign demand and domestic consumption. So my guess is that China is more vulnerable to external slowdown than many of us thought even 3 or 6 months ago.
While the government manages the economic fallout, it's also poised to tackle another vulnerability, the expanding rural-urban inequality. Today, over half the country's population live in the countryside and contribute little to the GDP. Beijing plans to plough money into rural infrastructure and other social programs, and grain prices could be allowed to rise. In a further boost, farmers will get the right to lease out or even mortgage their allocated land.
That could increase the income and spending power of a huge amount of population. That could help increase consumption in the economy and investment in the agricultural sector. So I think it's very important.
Over the past 3 decades, China has rewritten the book on how fast and for how long developing countries can grow. The authors of Communist Party policy now have a new challenge: to draft a theory on enhancing prosperity in times of a global economic slowdown.